You've probably had this experience. You glance in the mirror and think, I look pretty good today, then see a photo from the same moment and feel slightly betrayed. Hey, it can seem as if the mirror is flattering you and the camera is exposing some harsher truth. In reality, neither is truly objective. Your mirror, your camera, and your brain are all introducing systematic distortions. In this video, we'll unpack three big ones: how lenses physically warp your face, how your brain learns to prefer your mirror image, and how subtle psychological biases quietly upgrade the way you see yourself. Let's start with the least glamorous explanation: optics. A mirror simply reflects light back to your eyes. You normally view yourself from arm's length or further with both eyes in three dimensions. A smartphone camera does something very different. It has to compress a 3D face into a 2D image using a specific focal length. When the lens is wide angle and very close, as it is with most front-facing cameras, anything nearer to the lens, like your nose or forehead, is magnified relative to the rest of your face. Research on facial photography shows that wide-angle lenses at short distances make central features appear larger and change perceived proportions. Portrait photographers avoid this. They step back and use longer focal lengths, often around 85 to 105 millimeters, which minimizes geometric distortion and produces faces that look more like what we see in everyday life. Your bathroom mirror is effectively behaving like that ideal setup every morning, while your front camera often gives you the worst-case optical scenario. Lighting then amplifies the difference. Mirrors are usually paired with soft frontal light that fills in under-eye shadows and smooths texture. Overhead lighting or harsh flash in a photo deepens shadows and emphasizes skin irregularities. Because our visual system is highly tuned to tiny changes in facial shading, these lighting shifts alone can move us from rested to exhausted without any change in anatomy. But physics only explains why photos can look strange. It doesn't explain why you feel that your mirror self is the real you. For that, we have to talk about familiarity. The mere exposure effect describes a simple rule: the more often we encounter a stimulus, the more we tend to like it. Robert Zajonc first formalized this in 1968, and it's been replicated across words, shapes, and faces. In a classic 1977 experiment, Theodore Mita and colleagues photographed people, then created two versions of each image, one normal and one flipped left to right, like a mirror. Participants were asked which image of themselves they preferred and which image of a friend they preferred. People tended to choose the mirror version of their own face, but the true unflipped version of their friend's face. Each person preferred whichever version they had seen more often. More recent clinical studies echo this. A prospective study of over 200 female plastic surgery patients found that about 73% preferred mirror-reversed photos of themselves. A 2023 study of dental students reported that while participants usually preferred true images of other people, they often preferred mirror-flipped versions of their own selfies, the version that matches what they see in the mirror. Remember that human faces are subtly asymmetric. One eye sits a little higher, one side of the jaw is slightly broader, one corner of the mouth lifts more. In the mirror, you've spent thousands of hours learning that particular pattern as normal. A photo shows you the opposite configuration, the version everyone else sees. Your brain flags that flipped asymmetry as unfamiliar, which it often interprets as worse, even though to other people that version is perfectly ordinary. Neuroscience gives us some clues about how deep this familiarity runs. Functional MRI studies have shown that recognizing your own face consistently activates a network of regions in the right hemisphere, overlapping with so-called mirror neuron areas that link perception and action. Over years of mirror exposure, these circuits help build a predictive model of your appearance, a stable expectation of how you are supposed to look from a certain angle and distance. When you look in the mirror, the incoming visual information fits that model very well. When you look at a wide-angle, badly lit, non-reversed photo, the mismatch is much larger. Your brain doesn't just register different, it often experiences that as a negative deviation, especially because humans are highly sensitive to perceived flaws in anything related to the body. Now layer on one more bias. You don't just prefer the familiar version of your face, you're also slightly biased in your own favor. Psychologists describe a general self-enhancement bias, the tendency for people to hold self-views that are more positive than objective measures would justify. In attractiveness research, several studies have found that people's self-ratings of their looks tend to be higher than ratings given by independent observers. One striking experiment by Epley and Whitchurch used morphed faces. Participants' photos were blended with more attractive and less attractive faces in small steps. When asked which image was their real, unedited face, people were more likely to choose a slightly beautified morph than their actual photograph. The mirror is where that upgraded template gets rehearsed. You adjust your posture, tilt your head, manage your expression, and usually look at yourself only for a few seconds at a time. By contrast, tagged photos freeze you at unflattering micro moments, mid-blink, mid-speech, or under lighting you didn't choose. When you compare those frozen frames to your familiar, gently idealized mirror self, they almost have to lose. Modern technology pushes this even further. A 2023 meta-analysis on selfie behavior found that simply taking a lot of selfies isn't consistently linked to worse body image, but editing and filtering those selfies is. People who frequently retouch their selfies tend to report more negative appearance-related self-evaluations. Philosophers and psychologists have started talking about a distorted mirror effect, where constant exposure to beautified, filtered versions of one's face shifts the baseline of what feels normal. Clinical research on body dysmorphic disorder and related conditions shows how severe this can become. Patients with these disorders often spend excessive time scrutinizing themselves in mirrors and photos, and they show measurable differences in visual processing. Less holistic, big picture perception of faces and exaggerated attention to tiny details. For them, both the mirror and the camera are filtered through an already distorted internal model. Put all of this together and the puzzle starts to make sense. When you look at yourself, optics make your phone's camera less forgiving than your mirror. Mirror exposure makes your mirror image feel more right than the version everyone else sees. Self-enhancement nudges your internal mental picture a little closer to a beauty filter than to raw reality. So, how should you live with that? First, be cautious about drawing big conclusions from a single bad photo. If you want a more mirror-like shot, step back, avoid ultra-wide lenses, use soft frontal light, and take a few frames while you're relaxed and talking, not just rigidly posing. Second, remember that the version of your face that looks slightly odd to you in photos is the one other people actually know and like. Studies consistently find that while we prefer our mirror image, observers prefer our true, unflipped faces. The strange version you see on camera is literally the face your friends, partners, or coworkers are attached to. Third, keep in mind that both the mirror and the camera are filtered through the brain that's looking. Your inner representation of your face is flexible, shaped by exposure, mood, and culture. And finally, if worries about how you look in mirrors or photos are intense, constant, or interfering with daily life, that's a signal to think beyond optics. Given what we know about body image disorders and visual processing, it can be very helpful to talk with a mental health professional who understands these dynamics. You don't actually become less attractive when someone points a camera at you. You're just seeing yourself through a different, less familiar set of distortions. Once you understand how those distortions work, the mirror doesn't have to be your comforting liar, and the camera doesn't have to be your enemy.